Warning, this video may contain content that may not be suitable for children or anyone else that is easily offended. Strong language, graphic content, nudity, bad jokes, and a possible idiot, aka myself, may be featured in the following clip. Viewer discretion is advised. Channel is not responsible for any damages that you receive watching this video.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Zems, and welcome to another reaction video. Today we're going to react to SCP-016, Sentient Microorganism. This video was recommended to me by Mr. LO, guys. He said this video is a red flag parade, and Dr. Bob I was about to say Mr. Bob, uploaded this video 5 days ago. So let's see what this is all about. I've seen a little picture of it, and it kind of looks like something off of the anime called Parasite. If you guys have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's probably one of my favorite animes. But if you guys are new to the channel, my name is Reprisalzems, and welcome to the Crow's Nest. But yeah, man, this video is by Dr. Bob, so you guys have already been shooting super down description box. Click on the link or watch the video in entirety. So let's pause it and stop it and talk and do the whole thing. But for now, let's get it.
Practically writes in his journal, "It's almost impossible to believe everything that's transpired has taken place in such a short amount of time.
Is it though?
It all began 3 days ago. It was just another day down in the mines. A worker was drilling into a seam of coal when suddenly there was an issue with the rig.
That's a sus drill. Why that drill look like that? Hey.
From what I've gathered, it sounds like the drill bit exploded due to some kind of mechanical defect, sending shards of metal flying throughout the tunnel. The worker was lucky that none of the large pieces struck him, as they surely would have been fatal. He had, though, still been grazed by a piece of shrapnel from the ruined drill bit, and it had left a deep cut across his upper arm. Other miners who were working nearby heard the commotion and quickly came to his aid. They applied a tourniquet to stem the flow of blood and helped him to the mine shaft elevator for the long ride to the surface.
High and tight over the clothes.
Once they reached the safety of daylight, they brought the injured man to the on-site medical clinic, where I was on duty at the time.
Your HEV.
I cleaned the wound since there was a substantial amount of coal dust that had gotten inside, before suturing and bandaging it. The miner was sent to his bunkhouse to recover, and I thought that would be the end of it. Of course, it was only the beginning. Roughly 24 hours later, the same miner presented himself to me once again. I asked about his injury, and he explained that while his arm was fine, he now felt like he might be coming down with an illness. His symptoms included a runny nose, a cough, and body aches. So my assumption was that he'd simply had
COVID. That's what it was. No, I was kidding. But how you notice that now? Every time you do something, if you sneeze, everyone's like, if you cough, you can't even cough no more. Say if you just drinking water and someone didn't see you drinking water and it ran down the wrong pipe or something, you start coughing, bro, people look at you like you got COVID. You cannot have a normal cold no more. Everything is COVID, bro. You tell your manager or somebody you sick, they be like, oh, did you get checked for COVID? Like, bro, there's still normal sicknesses in 2022, bro. It's probably just a little cold. It could be the flu. Like, everything is just COVID. Everybody's just saying COVID.
bad luck and caught a cold that just so happened to coincide with being injured on the job. I sent him to his bunk once again, telling him that he wouldn't be able to work and should instead use the day to rest and recover.
Should've looked at his arm for infection.
The next day, I was once again in the clinic when my phone rang. It wasn't the sick miner, but instead his supervisor. The miner hadn't shown up for his shift that morning, and he asked for me to go check on him since he knew he hadn't been feeling well.
You're the supervisor.
I agreed that it was strange that neither of us had heard anything else from the miner and went to see him straight away. I entered the bunkhouse where many of the workers stay while on site at this remote mine. It was empty, except for the injured miner who was still in his bed. As I approached, I could immediately tell something was very wrong. The man was curled up in the fetal position and was sweating profusely while also shivering.
Stand back.
A quick touch of his forehead revealed that the man had a high fever, too. He was practically incoherent, seemingly delirious from his high temperature. The miner was moved to the empty bed inside the clinic so I could better observe and tend to him, but very carefully since I assumed now that he was actually suffering from influenza and didn't want to risk an outbreak at the mine. I was getting ready to administer fluids to the miner, who was still mumbling incomprehensibly, when I noticed something on his face. It appeared that he was crying, but the tears that ran down his cheeks weren't made of water. They were blood.
Ooh!
I hadn't seen anything like it before. There was no reason why influenza should be causing this man to cry tears of blood. I could see the veins in his forehead starting to pulse, as if his blood pressure had suddenly skyrocketed.
Bro, his brain is getting raped by a parasite right now, bro. Those are the hands of the organism pumping up top of this man's cerebral. I don't know, bro. If you start crying tears of blood and you're not like a Jesus or a Virgin Mary statue or something like that, bro, red flag, bro. Like, I love you. We buddies, you know, to the end of time, but don't touch me. I'll call you an Uber or an ambulance, bro. You're not getting in my car, bro. I don't know what I ain't never seen no stuff like that. It gotta be something that we ain't never dealt with before, because I ain't never seen somebody cry blood, bro. That's a new God. That's some God of War type stuff right there. Like you or The Witcher, you drink the wrong thing or something.
Just as I was leaning in to get a closer look,
It kissed him.
something horrible happened. The miner suddenly opened his mouth and expelled an enormous stream of blood. The blast of blood struck me in the face and knocked me backwards in fright as the man continued expelling more and more blood from his mouth, which soon covered the walls of the clinic. With seemingly all the blood having been discharged from his body, the man then went limp. I attempted to resuscitate him, but strangely, there was no need. The man was comatose, but he was alive. There I was, standing in the middle of the clinic over the man, both he, myself, as well as the room completely covered in blood. It was one of the worst things I'd ever experienced as a doctor.
Nothing a tampon can't
Yet,
fix.
somehow, it was about to get even worse. I was still in shock from what had just happened when I heard the door to the clinic open behind me. I turned around to see a group of half a dozen more miners from the site, each one coughing, sweating, and shivering. One held a cloth to his ear that was stained red, while another attempted to stop his nose from bleeding. Whatever had infected the first patient wasn't a one-off medical event. This had the makings of an epidemic. I knew that I was in way over my head. I was just a general practitioner, not an infectious disease specialist, and I called the Center for Disease Control to get their guidance. I was told to quarantine the sick man as best I could.
Boy, you about to be on quarantine too. Did you tell him that he just spit a gallon of blood on your face? Like, it's still on your face and you touching the phone right now, bro. You all quarantining. Call FEMA, the federal, call everybody, bro. I don't know, vice president, bro. Call every president, bro. Just hang up the phone, bro, and get quarantined, because all that tomato sauce.
And that a rapid response team would be sent who were better equipped to deal with potential outbreaks. While I waited for the CDC to arrive, I began moving the afflicted men to a bunkhouse that had been designated for
They need the
quarantine.
Umbrella Corporation.
Several more also began expelling huge amounts of blood, though unlike the first patient, none of the others survived the traumatic event. As I was putting the final infected man into a bed, I noticed something, though. There was a huge amount of heat radiating off of his lower body, and when I pulled down the blankets, I discovered something that even with all of the strange happenings, I still couldn't believe. There were huge lumps growing on his legs,
He got leg herpes.
each of which looked to be filled with some kind of fluid or gas, and they were extremely hot to the touch, as if the chemicals inside the lumps were creating a source of heat. As I was investigating the bizarre growths, I suddenly looked up to see that the man was no longer in a state of delirium. Instead, a crazed look had come over his eyes, and he suddenly leapt out of bed, flailing and clawing at me as if he wanted to kill me. I don't know how, but I was able to fight off the man and run out of the bunkhouse. He gave chase, though, and with no other option, I ran into a nearby storage shed. The man was beating and scratching at the door, but I was able to barricade it by dragging a heavy shelf in front of
He
it.
touched his bum bumps.
After several minutes of trying to break inside, he finally gave up and left. And here I remain. I'm too afraid to go back out. It seems that if the disease won't kill me, then whatever it is turning people into will. All I can do is wait for the CDC team to get here and hopefully know how to deal with whatever the situation is.
Anybody else ready for a zombie apocalypse? I don't know, maybe I'm just weird or insane, but every time I see a zombie movie, I'm like, man, I'll be this and that, but I'd be mad as hell if a zombie apocalypse started and I get bit first, bro. Because I think that's the worst time in a zombie apocalypse, is just like the beginning. Once that happens, it kind of like spreads out and it's not as bad. And then you just gotta be careful, but when it's like panic and it's hectic and it's going out of control, I don't know. But what you guys think is worse? The ones that can run, like on Dawn of the Dead? Or are you talking about the Walking Dead kind? Or you guys want to go back to the old school, like Night of the Living Dead? You know what I'm saying? The ones that can talk, you know what I'm saying? Or you want to do the smart ones, like on Resident Evil 4? Let me know down. Or the World War Z ones. Who them up? Boy, what? But this dude is red flag, bro. Mr. LOL, guys, is correct. Like, where's your gloves at? He just touching people's lips and noses and ears bleeding, kneecaps. He got pus bumps and you just rubbing and massaging goosebumps. Like, what are you doing, bro? Where's your gloves at, bro?
Come. The doctor closes his small notebook and notices a drop of something fall onto the cover. He reaches up and wipes his hand across his mouth.
I knew it.
It comes back, covered in blood. The doctor didn't know what the disease was that had so rapidly spread through the workers at the mine, nor did the CDC response team when they arrived. No, it wasn't until the SCP Foundation caught word of the mysterious outbreak that someone would finally determine what was happening with what would soon be called SCP-016, which is also known as the Sentient Microorganism.
That was close.
SCP-016 is a blood-borne pathogen that was first discovered after a worker at a remote mine was injured while drilling into a coal seam deep beneath the earth. It is theorized that coal dust entered the wound, dust which perhaps carried dormant spores of what would become SCP-016. Over the next several days, all of the remaining employees at the mine were infected, as was the CDC crisis team that was sent to the mine to investigate the outbreak of what was potentially an undiscovered pathogen.
Oh, damn.
Following the CDC's inability to deal with the disease, the SCP Foundation took over the site and quickly terminated all affected personnel in order to prevent further spread.
The big guns.
The first infected person, Patient Zero, was taken into Foundation custody for further investigation, and the mine shaft itself was collapsed by an explosive device in order to seal it off. After studying Patient Zero, the Foundation learned a great deal about just what they were dealing with. What they found was that SCP-016 has an incubation period that can vary wildly from just 24 hours to as long as 2 years, with the length appearing to be dependent on the number of other potential human hosts in the immediate area. Once symptoms begin to present in an individual, they will at first look to be quite similar to the common cold.
He did the Kamehameha sneezed on him. Like, that was a long-ass stream of bacteria.
The infected blood becoming aspirated, most likely in order to better spread through the air. The third stage of the disease leads to the host crashing and bleeding out as they start to bleed profusely from multiple body orifices, including the nose, tear ducts, mouth, and even through the pores of their skin. Their blood pressure will also skyrocket during this final stage, and in some cases have vomited blood as far as 5 meters. Oddly enough, although most die from the traumatic event, this almost complete exsanguination will not always result in death. Sometimes, following the removal of almost all blood from the body, the patient will somehow survive, and the pathogen inside their body will return to its dormant phase once again, before eventually repeating the process.
Oh, hell.
But SCP-016 is more than just a rapid and often deadly bloodborne disease, as you will soon see. As SCP researchers studied the disease, what they discovered was that it had a very strange property that sets it apart from other hemorrhagic fevers like Ebola and the Marburg virus. What they found was that when someone infected with SCP-016 is placed into a high-stress situation, such as one where their life is being threatened, SCP-016 will transition from rapidly reproducing inside of its host's body to instead begin rewriting their host's actual DNA. This genetic manipulation, combined with the stimulation of rapid cell division, leads to the host undergoing major physiological changes and in extremely small amounts of time. In just 24 hours, the host can begin showing physical changes to their body, and a complete bodily reconstruction can occur in less than 2 weeks.
Like what?
Most of the hosts who begin to undergo physical changes will not survive the process, due to how heavily the transformation stresses the body, but those that do will be changed in more than just physical ways. They'll exhibit hyper-aggressive behaviors, not dissimilar to those infected by rabies. And it's theorized that the pathogen may cause this behavior in order to better spread the virus. When the Foundation realized that SCP-016 was capable of these transformative effects, they immediately undertook a number of experiments on D-Class personnel in order—
Man, if they don't blow this damn thing up, bro, look at this sting, bro.
Yeah.
It's like a flying mosquito mixed with a bee sting. Like, bro, what is this? It's like a little pinching, it's like a potato bug, bro. I was gonna say at the end of the video that this SCP is particularly scary because this is like a pathogen that's more realistic than most anything, but shape-shifting into whatever this is, bro, no. SCP, y'all, people got some imaginations on them, bro. My imagination don't go that far. The shit shape-shifted into like a guardian angel, then it shape-shifted into like a little flat, like, what you call that tall dude? Y'all know what I'm talking about. The tall bald dude, the little slender man. Turned into that, and then he just turned into this little Fallout or Borderlands or something.
to better understand their full extent. In the first test, a D-Class was infected with SCP-016, and as soon as they began showing symptoms, their cell was slowly flooded with water in order to stimulate the life-threatening situation needed to trigger the transformation process. Over the next 24 hours, researchers watched as the subject appeared to develop gills, which would allow it to survive in the now water-filled cell. The transformations didn't stop there, though, and over the next 2 weeks, the subject also had their limbs change into fins, their eyesight deteriorated, and their sense of hearing increased as they developed an echolocation ability very similar to the one employed by whales and dolphins.
Oh, hell no.
The experiment was concluded by removing all of the water from the cell, leading to the death of the subject from asphyxiation, as they could no longer breathe in the open air. A similar experiment was performed on another D-class, but this time, instead of taking on aquatic animal properties, the D-class experienced rapid muscle growth and their knuckles grew bone-like protrusions. It attempted to use both of these to break through the door of their flooding cell, but they were unable to breach the reinforced steel and soon died from drowning. The Foundation now knew that the virus could react in different ways to the same situation. The same experiment was run a third time, but in this instance, the infected D-class exhibited an entirely different means of trying to escape. The subject had a massive growth appear on its chest, which seemed to be fed from 2 different tubes of flesh, also emanating from the subject's body. Fearing what it planned to do, the Foundation ended the experiment early and terminated the subject. An autopsy revealed that the growth was actually a hollow chamber that was being fed by the tubes with oxygen and acetylene gas, which when combined in sufficient amounts would cause a massive combustion event. In other words, SCP-016 was turning the subject into a living bomb. Moving on from flooded cell tests, the researchers next left the D-class inside of a room with no stressing elements, and instead told them to focus on growing a pair of wings. Without any reason to begin the transformation process, SCP-016 went through its normal stages, and the subject died from blood loss without any other changes occurring. In the final test, a D-class was placed inside of an acrylic box that was suspended over a mine shaft, with a timer attached indicating the time when the bottom of the box would open and drop the D-class into the 1,000-foot deep shaft. This D-class was also told to focus on growing wings that would allow them to survive the plunge. The subject began to transform over the next 24 hours, but rather than grow wings, they instead developed a tentacle-like appendage on their arm that was capable of producing silk, similar to a spider's spinneret. They used the silk-producing organ to secure themselves to the box, showing that subjects did not appear to be able to control the way in which SCP-016 would alter their bodies. This experiment concluded when the timer reached 0, and the bomb attached to it detonated, as had been the plan all along. Following this last test, SCP-016 samples were placed into containment, and access to the sample for experimental purposes is only allowed with prior authorization from Level 4 or 05 personnel, with full documentation of the proposed experiment required beforehand. Failure to follow any of these procedures will lead to the offending personnel being reassigned to D-class duty or terminated. SCP-016 has been classified as Keter, and the only existing sample is kept in a petri dish which is under extreme lockdown inside of a 5 by 5 by 5 meter room, where the temperature is kept below 0 degrees Celsius at all times. Should an outbreak of SCP-016 occur, all infected personnel are to be immediately terminated on site, and if the infection cannot be contained within 48 hours, then the on-site nuclear device is to be detonated prior to any additional personnel being evacuated. While the containment procedures may sound callous, unfortunately, when it comes to anomalous pathogens as dangerous as SCP-016, no chances can be taken.
Man, they had a Kroger Wolverine, bruh. And then we had the Kroger Spider-Man. Then the other one, the Boomers, the one from like Left 4 Dead where they can throw vomit, whatever it is. But in this case, it was blood. I don't know. Every time, I think I said every video, every time we see a messed up SCP, somebody else comes and says, that's nice. Hold my beer. Look at this SCP. And this one is worse. So I can only imagine who's going to come up with the next one. Like, oh, you think that one is bad? Look at this one. Like, this one was, like I said, this one was like more scary because I could see a pathogen having this kind of effect because we were around discovering and exploring things a lot of times and we don't even know what we're tapping into or touching. So I see that happening, but the shapeshifter one was kind of like a little bit far-fetched, but that's scary, man. I knew he was going to get infected. He was going here touching people's booty holes and stuff and not wearing gloves. Like, bro, what are you doing? But yeah, man, this video is by Dr. Bob. So you guys have already be sure super down description box. Comment on the link or watch the video in entirety. So I was pausing and stopping and talking through the whole thing. Thank you guys so much, man. If you guys new to the channel, my name is Reprisalzems, and welcome to the Crow's Nest. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.